In everyone's life, there are moments when, despite all efforts, what is desired seems to slip away. The stronger the desire to control the course of events, the further they seem to recede. During such periods, the question inevitably arises, is the problem within oneself, in one's actions, or lack of diligence? However, there is another viewpoint, deeper and calmer, connected with destiny. Carl Jung, a prominent researcher of the human soul, asserted that what is truly meant to be does not require force. There is a natural flow, a synchronicity that connects a person with events, people, and paths that are part of their authentic life journey. When a person begins to live in harmony with themselves, what is meant to belong to them invariably finds them. This idea may contradict the conventional wisdom instilled from childhood that everything must be achieved through hard work and persistence, otherwise someone else will take your place, and you will lose. However, such a logic of constant struggle disconnects a person from something more subtle, from the natural rhythm of life, from the wisdom hidden beyond the visible. Jung believed that the soul has its purpose and attracts what is necessary for its growth, not what the ego desires. The soul strives not for the ideal, but for what contributes to its transformation. This is why the most desired things often do not happen. Perhaps the person is not yet ready, the time has not come, or deep down it is not what will lead them to their true destiny. Such an awareness radically changes the perception of losses, moments of silence and life's rejections, transforming the attitude towards time, anxieties, and the desire for control. When a person begins to trust the natural course of events, perceiving it not as passive acceptance but as a manifestation of spiritual courage, peace reigns in their inner world. The desire to prove one's worth, rush events, and achieve goals at any cost gradually loses its power. In its place comes an unwavering confidence that what is meant to be will definitely happen, and until then, one can live a full life, develop, and become the person they need to be to receive what is already on its way to them. Destiny does not make mistakes in the route, it only awaits the most opportune moment for realization. The assertion that what is destined will inevitably find its addressee does not imply inaction. It is not about folding one's hands and passively waiting for miracles served on a silver platter. Jung proposes a deeper and more effective approach, the path of self-discovery. For what is desired to truly find us, we need to be in the right place, and this place is not a geographical location, but an internal state. When a person is detached from their true essence, living in pursuit of distorted notions of love, success, and recognition, they attract unsuitable relationships into their life and insist on projects that drain their soul. All this creates a vicious circle of disappointments, making them believe that life is hostile. However, in reality, it is merely a reflection of internal disunity. What is destined can find a person only when they are in harmony with their true essence. This is why many things start to work out when a person stops forcibly fitting into alien frameworks, ceases pursuing those who do not notice them, pleasing those who will never accept them, and following paths laid out by others' expectations. From the moment a person begins to respect their essence, even without a clear idea of the final destination, life begins to reciprocate. Jung spoke of the process of individuation, which is an immersion into one's truth. This is the moment when a person begins to listen to themselves, not to the opinions of the world around them. This inner movement, however quiet it may be, has a profound impact on choices, relationships, and presence in the world. A person ceases to be lost, striving to fit into others' frameworks, and becomes a complete individual who is found. At this moment, synchronicity becomes commonplace. People appear out of nowhere. Opportunities arise at the most unexpected moments, and doors that previously seemed locked open with ease. And this is not magic, but alignment. The universe seems to say, now you are ready, now you can receive what you desire. The most wonderful thing about this state of connection is that a person no longer experiences the desperate haste that haunted them before, because they understand that everything has its time, that waiting is also part of the journey, and it should not be rushed. It is then that what is destined truly finds a person, not because they forced it to happen, but but because they have become someone who already lives in harmony with what has not yet arrived. And this state of peace in itself is a harbinger of an imminent meeting. The question of what is truly yours holds far more depth than it initially appears. Not everything a person strives for is actually meant for them. Often, desires are dictated by the ego, a drive to prove one's worth, fill an internal void, or heal old emotional wounds. It is during these moments that a substitution of concepts occurs, where a person confuses what is imposed with what they truly need. As Carl Jung stated, the human soul possesses a wisdom incomprehensible to the ego. This is why many of our most cherished desires remain unrealized. The reason lies not in a lack of ability, but in a person's unreadiness to become who they need to be in order to achieve what they desire, without losing themselves in the process. In this context, life does not deny opportunities, but merely postpones their realization until a moment of maturity arrives. This maturity has nothing to do with perfection. It consists of an internal readiness to say no to what causes pain, even if it seems attractive, and in honestly acknowledging that some dreams were merely illusory walls painted in heavenly colors. It is in the process of releasing the unnecessary that true acquisition begins. When a person lets go of what does not belong to them, they open up space for what is truly destined for them to enter their life. This could be a new love, a promising job, a move to another city, or even a re-evaluation of the worth of what already exists but has not been properly appreciated. Typically, what comes at this moment does not possess the dazzling brilliance that the ego craved, but it brings a sense of inner peace and harmony. It feels as though one has stopped swimming against the current and is experiencing a tailwind for the first time. This does not mean there is no need to make an effort, but it implies mindful presence, an understanding of when to stop fighting, let go of the situation, and trust in fate. It is this awareness that changes everything. When a person expends energy trying to open doors that won't budge, they send a signal to the universe that they do not trust the natural course of events, do not believe that something better awaits them, and prefer to cling to the small, superficial, and painful. But when they release the situation with faith and conviction, they declare, "I deserve better." This simple act of liberation changes the vibrations they emit, the energy field around them, and the responses that life sends them. Thus, what is truly meant to belong to a person begins to gradually approach them without unnecessary fanfare or anxiety. The true enters life not with a crash, but because it recognizes its home in the person. This home is found only when a person stops conforming to stereotypes imposed by society and begins to live in accordance with their true nature. A turning point arrives when one realizes that there is no longer a need for aimless pursuit, and this is dictated not by pride or disappointment, but by mature wisdom. This realization comes when it becomes clear that everything that slips away was not originally intended, and what remains, even in a whirlwind of chaos, doubt, and silence, deserves attention and care. As Carl Jung stated, a person represents a symbolic field where there is no room for chance, and every event carries a specific message. Persistently striving for what is clearly leaving not only drains energy, but also leads to a loss of connection with one's own essence. True calling does not require pursuit. It needs presence, understanding, and inner harmony. This new perspective radically changes the perception of losses, rejections, separations, and silence. They cease to be perceived as rejection and begin to be interpreted as redirection. It is in this redirection that the answers that have been sought for so long lie. What once seemed to be the center of the universe turns out to be just a deviation, a brief path intended to learn to say no, to know oneself more deeply, and to recognize one's true limits and desires. Realizing this when the pain is still fresh is not easy. However, over time, especially with the advent of awareness, it becomes clear. What seemed to reject actually freed. What did not happen did not disappoint, but protected. When a person comes into agreement with their deepest essence, everything that does not correspond to it begins to gradually dissolve. This is not a punishment, but rather a polishing, an acquisition of clarity, and the beginning of a new stage where there is no longer a need to beg for love, attention, or presence. What is destined is already on its way and will definitely be recognized as part of the overall fabric of life. However, in order for this to happen, it is necessary to stop hiding behind masks created to earn recognition. True love, destined fate, and awaiting life do not recognize false images. They will only get closer when a firm decision is made to live without filters, armor, and the fear of appearing vulnerable. It is in vulnerability that authenticity lies, and it is through it that the universe finds ways to reach out. Carl Jung's views on the human soul suggest that it has the ability to attract exactly what is necessary for its full development. At the same time, the soul's needs may radically differ from the desires of the ego. Losing things, breaking off relationships, or missing opportunities should not be perceived as punishment. Rather, it is a process of freeing oneself from the unnecessary, preparing to accept something more significant and true. The point is that what is destined will inevitably find its way, but to do so one must find oneself. Jung viewed fate not as something predetermined and external, but as an internal process of self-discovery and revelation. Fate manifests when a person stops running away from their true self. In other words, what is desired cannot enter life while an individual lives by other people's expectations, repeats imposed patterns of behavior, strives to please others, and conforms to accepted standards. The true comes only when a person exposes their emotions, begins to respect their own contradictions, listens to inner discomfort, and accepts their feelings. It is at this moment that the universe begins to reciprocate, adapting to the changes within the person. It is not the world around that changes, but the perception of that world. What seemed complex, unattainable, and incredible begins to happen naturally, as if it has always been nearby, waiting for permission. This permission is a key moment. When a person realizes that they will no longer seek attention, impose themselves where there is no reciprocity, or belittle themselves to meet someone else's expectations, they create a new energy field around themselves. Only that which vibrates at the frequency of their true essence enters this field. This has almost magical power. A person begins to understand that they do not need to chase after someone, convince, or prove anything. Significant connections arise on their own, opportunities open up effortlessly, and paths open not because of entreaty, but thanks to inner harmony. Carl Jung, a Swiss psychiatrist and philosopher, defined this phenomenon as synchronicity, a series of events that seem to lack logical connection but are filled with the deepest meaning. When a person lives in harmony with their true self, the surrounding world begins to send them signs, barely perceptible but guiding them like a silent compass, pointing the right way. Therefore, one should not despair if a cherished desire has not come true. One should not reproach oneself for the time spent on those who did not stay in life, or regret the generosity shown to those who could not appreciate it. All this is an integral part of the life path, an experience that shapes personality. Each loss teaches to value what one has, each rejection, to realize one's own significance, each silence, to listen to the inner voice. It is these lessons that prepare the ground for future accomplishments. When a person stops unsuccessfully breaking into locked doors, other doors open before them on their own. And it is into these new doors that one should enter, not with apprehension, but with courage, not with doubts, but with confidence. After all, what is destined by fate does not require desperate efforts, but only sincerity. When a person chooses the path of truth, everything that rightfully belongs to them begins to recognize them in return. This is the enduring beauty of life. The most difficult test is believing in the process when there is stagnation around. In moments when we are surrounded only by silence and expectation, when it seems that nothing is happening, it is difficult to believe in future changes. However, silence is an important stage of revelation, a time when we learn to listen to ourselves, restore connection with our true desires, and realize what no longer corresponds to our path. The universe does not obey our mental time frames. It follows the rhythm of the soul's maturation. Often this period requires detachment from external stimuli, cleansing from superficial connections and finding meaning in the space between the completed phase and the new stage. Like Carl Jung said, any process of transformation begins with a descent into the depths of the unconscious, where we face our shadows, heal old wounds, and reclaim forgotten parts of ourselves. This journey may seem lonely, but in fact, it is an important preparation. During this quiet preparation, life often puts us to the test. People whose vibrations no longer correspond to ours reappear. Old situations try to bring us back, and the mind, with its habitual defense mechanisms, convinces us of the fallacy of the chosen path. It is at this pivotal moment that one must stand up for their truth, even when it has yet to yield visible results, remaining true to oneself despite the temptation to revert to familiar comfort. This is an act of faith, not in a religious sense, but in a spiritual one. Faith in one's own journey, in the belief that what lies ahead surpasses what has been left behind. By maintaining this inner integrity, we notice how the world around us begins to shift. New people appear, opportunities arise that seem more aligned, and a sense emerges even without tangible proof that we are drawing closer to what we have always sought. Perhaps the most beautiful aspect of this process is the realization that what is meant for us arrives not simply to fill a void, but to unlock our potential. It is not about finding a missing piece, but about sharing our wholeness. Connections that truly transform do not rescue us, but reflect us, showing how much we have grown, healed, and are ready to live in harmony with ourselves. Love that arrives at this stage is no longer tied to expectations, but to presence, not to necessity, but to choice. And all of this becomes possible because of the process undergone earlier. What is meant to be will inevitably find us, not because we pursued it, but because we remain true to ourselves where it matters most, within. Destiny, in this case, is not a predetermined line, but a natural consequence of who we have become. And when, at last, what is meant for us arrives, there is no doubt, confusion, or need to prove anything. An inner silence descends, confirming the rightness of what is happening, and a peace that reigns even amidst external uncertainties. Jung believed that the unconscious guides us to encounters that reveal our true selves, and when this occurs, we recognize not only the other person, but also ourselves. This does not mean that the path will be easy or without challenges, but there will be an unspoken agreement between what we feel and what we experience. Every detail seems to fall into place, and in this alignment there is no need for masks. We can be ourselves, without defenses, without strategies, without the constant fear of being rejected, because a true meeting occurs between souls who have seen each other before, even if they do not consciously remember. Such an experience radically changes one's perception of love, success, purpose, and self-actualization. There is a realization that it is not just about achieving what is desired, but about attracting what harmonizes with a new level of consciousness. Life ceases to be a feverish pursuit of answers, transforming into a graceful dance with the unknown. One begins to trust the natural course of events, relinquishing total control, learning to see the beauty in the process itself, not just in its completion. There is an awareness that everything previously resisted was actually waiting for the right moment, when one would be ready to accept it. This applies to people, opening opportunities, changes in life, inner healing, and even achievements that previously seemed unattainable. Everything begins to fall into place when one stops running, beginning to move towards the goal consciously. This is the true power of understanding that what is meant to be will inevitably find its addressee. It is not about passively waiting for a miracle, but about moving with awareness, about choosing with clarity, about becoming someone who lives in harmony with their desires. As Jung said, the meaning of life is not in its search, but in its living. To live meaningfully means aligning one's actions with one's true essence. When this happens, the external world begins to respond more harmoniously. What seemed incredible becomes inevitable, and what caused anxiety brings serenity. There is an understanding that what is meant to be is not lost, not far away, and not delayed. It is simply waiting for the moment when one becomes whole enough to experience it with depth, presence, and maturity. The deepest truth of the life path lies in the fact that what is destined often finds a person not in a moment of active searching, but in a state of inner harmony and acceptance. When an individual ceases desperate attempts to prove their worth to the world, lets go of the desire for total control, and begins to live in accordance with their true values, then something magical happens. Changes occur not because of external circumstances, but because of an internal transformation, which, like a mirror, is reflected in all that exists. People who previously did not notice suddenly begin to see. Doors that seemed impregnable open, and desired goals become achievable. The universe responds not to words and declarations, but to the inner essence of a person. That is why attempts to forcibly change the course of events, chasing after the elusive and persistently knocking on closed doors, lead to exhaustion. Deep down, everyone realizes that what is true requires not struggle, but only presence, integrity, and an open heart. Carl Jung asserted that destiny is not only external events, but also the result of harmony with one's own unconscious. Respect for personal boundaries, healing of emotional wounds, and attention to inner signs shape the path by which destiny can find a person. Every conscious decision, every timely no, and every sincere yes build a bridge between the individual and their purpose. This process may seem slow and painful, as it requires abandoning the former self in order to find true essence. However, it is in this void between the past and the future that a real miracle is born, the possibility of being found by what resonates with the very depths of the soul. In such moments there is no triumph of conquest, but rather a feeling of reunification, as if a certain design already existed deep inside, waiting only to awaken in memory. Therefore, if today there is a feeling of confusion and impatience, if it seems that life is lagging behind or dreams are drifting away, it is worth taking a deep breath, trusting the flow of events, and rethinking one's inner compass. For what is destined is not lost, does not fade, and is not forgotten. It is simply waiting for the right moment when a person is ready, whole, and open to meeting it, not only with outstretched hands, but also with an open soul. And when that moment arrives, all tension, anxiety, and haste disappear, leaving only a deep silence that affirms it has come. And at the moment of arrival of this awareness, a person unmistakably recognizes it, because their whole being screams, yes. This yes does not come from the mind, not from fear, and not from need, but from the soul itself, and the soul, as we know, never